Great. Awesome. Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the monthly Keller Williams Young Professionals Triangle chapter, Coffee with Omega. We are the Triangle of North Carolina, which is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. I'm representing today. Got my Raleigh baseball t-shirt on. Excited to bring some Southern comfort and Southern hospitality to our friend Kimberlee from up north, where I assume it's a little bit colder. So we're going to have Kimberlee unmute and join us here as we get started. In the room will fill up. And I want to encourage you guys, whatever link that you saw this from, please share that to your office. This is open for everyone. We're here to really just bring in a friend of mine, Kimberlee, to get her knowledge. She's generously sharing with us. And so we want to share with as many people as we can. And this is going to be recorded. And if you don't know, if you're joining us from outside of Keller Williams, we want to let you know that we're a real estate brokerage all around the world. We have a young professionals division, which is for the really eager high performers under 40 who are building big businesses, which you're going to hear about from Kimberlee this morning. And Kimberlee really embodies our young professional spirit in many ways: collaboration, productivity, always be learning, humility, and of course, being willing to share this morning. So with that said, we're going to kick this off. And Kimberlee, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's great to see you here. I haven't talked to you in a while. And so we're going to cover a lot of stuff today. We're going to cover personal stuff, business, hobbies, all sorts of things. And you're such an interesting person. I'm excited to dig into it. But first, I want to hear, what was it like getting into real estate? You know, so many of us, young professionals, are still new to real estate. We've come from other careers. Not many of us start right out of college. So give us the 2-3 minute Kimberlee story on how you got to where you are now.
Oh gosh, accidentally, I guess, is like the quickest answer to all of that. So I went to college initially I went to college for business, and I was really kind of bored by the courses. So I wanted to drop out of school, and my parents were like, okay, but what are you going to do? And I had no idea. So I stuck around in school and decided to get an art degree. So my grandmother was an artist. My mom was an artist. My mom is kind of one of the few people that has made a little bit more of like a commercial business out of it than most like fine arts people that don't go into like graphic design or something that's a little bit more commercialized. And that wasn't really a route I wanted to take. I thought maybe I'll become like an art professor, go back to school, get my MFA. Not really sure. So I went to school, got a BFA in painting, and then graduated college, like no idea what I was going to do. Most MFA programs want you to have a year or two of like real world experience before you apply to get your graduate degree. And so I ended up getting this job at a company that sold wholesale scarves to big stores like Anthropologie, Nordstrom, TJ Maxx. And it was a small company, but we did a lot of sales volume, and I handled all the boutique accounts. So it was a really fun job. It was kind of my first like dipping my toes into sales beyond just retail experience. And I loved it, except I had this awful boss. He was such a jerk, like such a miserable person. And I ended up being able to buy my first house with that job. So it was like kind of the silver lining that came out of it. And my agent was the one that encouraged me to get my real estate license. I'd always been interested in real estate. I spent a lot of time at my job looking at real estate instead of doing work, because I just get all my work done and then look at like Zillow and stuff. And so I ended up buying the house, quitting my job, and getting my real estate license. And it was not an easy experience. I think it's easy to see the people on stage that have achieved this level of success and think like, oh my gosh, they've had it easy. But a lot of times we don't hear the stories of like the struggle getting into it. And I was 26 years old when I got my license. And at the time it was like the messaging in Keller Williams was like, work your database, work your sphere, like talk to the people you know. And nobody that I knew was buying a house. Like I was by far the youngest of all my friends to buy a house. So it took me a while to just really figure out like how I was going to get business and how we like do this thing.
Let me unmute. Sorry, I'm sitting here listening, paying attention. Well, that's really funny that you say that, because one of the things that so actually going back to where we met, do you remember where you and I met?
No,
So it
sorry.
was, no, it's okay. It was that family reunion when you meet like 20,000 people, right? So we were standing outside in Anaheim, outside the convention center, and I was chatting with, I think, Mark Ramsey, who you had known
Oh my
at the
gosh,
time.
yeah.
Yeah. And then he was like, oh, Patrick, let me, because Mark had just done a bold for us here in North Carolina, maybe a year before, or 2 years before. I was like, Mark, how are you, man? When we did bold, he was auditioning. He was doing the little segment so he could then like kind of prove that he could be a bold teacher. So then I was catching up with him and hearing about his success. And then I saw you. He's like, Patrick, let me introduce you to Kimberlee. And it was funny because you and I stood there for a minute and you were kind of like, it was that awkward moment at family reunion when you're trying to figure out what's next. Am I going to go meet my friends? Am I going to get at lunch? But at the time, you were doing real estate up north a little bit further, about an hour north of Boston, right?
Yeah, so I've had quite the journey to get here. And that's so funny. I'm so sorry that I didn't remember that.
No, you don't
I
have
was
to
like,
apologize at all.
didn't we meet through YP? Apparently not.
Yes, well,
Um,
no, then like a year or two later, we reconnected through YP. But
that's
I mean,
so
at family
funny.
reunion, I'm friending like every single person I can on Facebook. Like you never know where that connection's going to come in handy. So I had seen you on Facebook for like 2 years before then reconnecting through YP. But what I love about that is at the time when I met you, it's kind of what you mentioned. It was early on. My friends weren't like wanting to buy a house. Like you were kind of struggling. It's kind of like at family reunion. It's like, where do I go next? Am I going to lunch? Am I doing this? And then at some
Yeah,
point shortly thereafter that, you got a lot of clarity and moved to Boston. So tell us what that was
well,
like, doing real estate for a few years and kind of spinning your wheels and not seeing the success you wanted, which inspired you to move to Boston.
well, it's funny that also that you mentioned that about family reunion, and I think it's a good thing to keep in mind, especially as we're approaching kind of 2 months away from family reunion. Is like there's so many ways to get business, right? And I say this all the time, like figure out what you enjoy doing and then go like watch those things. And it's easy to get overwhelmed at these events to be like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and implement all these, and it's just never gonna work. So pick like one or two things that you want to take away, implement in your business, and just focus on those. And that's where I've had a lot of my successes, just from being hyper focused. So, to make a long story short, I started my real estate career in southern New Hampshire, southern Maine area. Didn't really do much the first year. Then I took an admin position for a year because I was going through like a major life change. And I just figured, like, I hadn't really figured out how to do this whole sales thing. And I just was like, salary, stable, this sounds great. Did that for about 9 months and realized that I hated having my income attached to somebody else's activities. So I kind of sat down and like looked at my life and realized that I'd never really lived more than like an hour from where I grew up. Even in college, it was like an hour to get home. So I was like, you know what? If I'm going to make a life change, now is going to be the time. I don't have kids. It's just me and my dog. I didn't have a partner at that time. So I moved to the North Shore of Boston and I joined a team there. And I was there for like, again, 9 months until they wanted to, they're no longer with Keller Williams, but at the time they were, and they wanted to expand locally. So they were kind of implementing the expansion model, but in like more local markets. So they offered me the opportunity to move to Boston and be an expansion partner for them. Well, a lot of their business came from like commissioning like pay-per-click leads, and anybody that's worked that type of business knows that that can take a while. It's really like 6 to 12 months before any of those leads turn into something, and occasionally you get someone that's kind of like a right away now, but it's not a predictable way to plan your business. So they were like, here, we're going to pay for leads, but you're going to have to kind of figure out how to get some business in the meantime on your own. And so I started doing first time homebuyer seminars with a lender partner of mine, and I paid for everything. We did all the work, and I'd hate to say like instant success, but we were feeling like there was good traction right away. And then a month after I moved to Boston, I got a call that everybody pretty much on the team had quit in the hub. So all the admin had quit, all but like 2 or 3 of the agents had quit because of the admin quitting. And they were like, so this is going on. If you want to stay on the team, we would love to have you, but if not, we totally get it. And I looked at everything that I had at that time, and it was business that I had acquired through the first time buyer seminars that I paid for and did all the work for. And so I just figured, you know what, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would I stay? Let me just try to figure this out on my own. And it's been kind of a slow journey from there to build my own business.
So you join a team. You're like, oh yeah, I'll go to Boston. I'll open this new office. And then within a month, you hear everyone's quitting, but you've got this solid business nugget that you've just kind of started with these buying seminars. And I know that's been really pivotal to you growing your business. And before we get back to that question, I want to say welcome to Darnell and Jesse. Jesse's local here, and Darnell is mi hermano down in South Florida. I hope you have a cafecito. And if you guys want to be on camera, you're more than welcome to. This isn't just for us to be on camera. So please feel free to come on. I know some people may be driving or, shaving or brushing their teeth.
They should come on camera. I don't care if you want to or not. Come on.
Okay, great. Well, Kimberlee is our guest and she's in charge and she says, come on camera, everyone. So
it's a lot more fun for me and you guys got me up.
Yeah. Exactly, right? So yay, there's Darnell probably showing a commercial building somewhere doing a sale. So please feel free to leave questions in the chat for now, and then like Becca mentioned, we'll have a time for live Q&A with Kimberlee here in a little bit. If you have a really pressing question and you're going to hop off for a 9 o'clock appointment, just hit the hand raising button down there, and we'd love to have you come up and ask Kimberlee your question. So Kimberlee, tell us about that transition. You took a jump to Boston. Everyone quits, you're stranded, but you've got a glimmer of hope in your home buying seminars and some of your business coming out of that. What was that like for you from a mentality perspective, from that newer agent who doesn't have that gritty confidence yet, or you may have, but yeah, tell us what your mindset was like in that phase.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, that was like 3 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. I had a glimmer of hope and I had a really good coach. And I think that was a huge part of my success. And this isn't to be like, you have to get into coaching. It was just worked for me. So I tend to get really distracted and excited by things. And, I'm going to try this. Oh, I'm going to do that. And she kept me so focused. Her whole thing was like, master your one thing. And I had heard like Tony DeSello said one time that the 135, so like the GPS, anybody that knows that Keller Williams tool, it's your priority, right? You can't have 3 priorities. You have 1 priority and then each thing comes after that. So you don't have 3 priorities. It's called a priority. So my first number 1 thing on my GPS was buyer seminars. And on that episode, it was like the One Thing podcast, I think Jeff Woods interviewed Tony DeSello, and they said like, you don't earn the right to move on to the second item until you've mastered the first. And so that was like the focusing question that became a whole 1.5 years of my business, was like, have you mastered this? And it forced me every time that I wanted to move on to that next shiny object, because it wasn't as like new and exciting. And I don't want to say boring, but it's like not that spark anymore when you start to master something. It forced me every time to really look at like the system that I was building and say like, have I really done all that I could? And so the advice that I always give to people is like, they look at what I've created with the buyer seminars and the success that I've had. And a lot of times like I was saying earlier, we see people in that moment where they've hit the success, but we don't talk about the journey to get there. And like people often are like so intimidated to get started with buyer seminars, but it's an evolutionary process. So like what I'm doing today is not the same thing that I did in the summer of 2018 when I was first starting, but it's evolved over time, and you can't start something new and expect to have it perfect, because that's when people just never start. So just do something and then focus on improving it slowly over the time.
Yeah, I am very prone to perfectionism and analysis by paralysis. So that kind of like priorities. I mean, Jeff Woods and Jay Papazan on the One Thing podcast. If you guys get nothing else out of this, which I know you will, because Kimberlee's great, but listen to the One Thing podcast while you're driving. Like it's like these same kind of conversations. And it's not all specifically about real estate, no matter what business you're in. I've sent certain episodes to friends of mine who are in other businesses, and they've like, it's changed their worlds. And so definitely listen to that podcast. That's the reason why I still own a property right now, is hearing Jay and Gary talk about holding on to properties long-term rather than selling them for short-term gains. So yeah, Kimberlee, that podcast is amazing. And I love what you said about, not knowing the mentality of what it was like, the kind of the imposter syndrome, all those things that go on behind the facade that everyone sees. It's the bold law. Don't compare your insides to someone else's outsides, right? I can't compare myself to Kimberlee's, production on Facebook, because she has things going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. And you actually posted about it the other day about feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome on the masterminds with Gary. And so I'd love to hear more about that. Let's fast forward to today. What are you doing with your mindset to keep yourself motivated now that you have a lot more success than you did 3 years ago? So what does mindset and motivation look like for you now?
Right now, where I'm at today, it's just getting back to that focus. So I hate to say like I had a tough year, because I still grew my business by $10 million, but it wasn't what I wanted. So I've been really hard on myself for the last few months. My struggle currently is like wanting to get distracted when something isn't going the way that I want in my business. And it's now moved past a system to more of like a person. So usually when we're struggling with something, it's that we're missing a person, a system, or a tool. And I've had like a learning experience of finding the right person for my admin role. I'm on my third hire since pretty much this time last year. And that's been a process. And then whenever I end up taking that job back, I hate it and I don't care about my business. So it's kind of been less of like the selling part, more of like the back end of like learning the scaling part of a business. And then just staying focused. So like I allowed myself to get very distracted by different opportunities that came my way this year that I wanted to explore. And like in hindsight, I'm kind of hard on myself that like I probably could have done a lot more for production this year if I hadn't allowed that distraction to come into my life. But at the same time, like it's a learning experience. So I feel like I'm going into this next year with a lot of clarity and a lot of focus. And like I know what my one thing is for 2022.
What is your one thing? Is it still the home buying seminars?
No, my one thing is to recruit a net of 7 agents to my team.
Awesome. I love it. Something you mentioned earlier was about focusing on the person rather than the task. It sounds like you might have read the book Who, Not How.
I haven't
Very
actually. No.
familiar with it. Yeah, it's all about that concept. So I mean, I have it. I haven't read it yet. It's on my shelf, but I know you're a big reader, Kimberlee. I love your book reviews that you do on Facebook. So if you guys don't know too, yeah, make sure you friend Kimberlee on Facebook so you can get her book reviews that she does as she reads throughout the year. So Becca dropped a really good question about your home buying seminars. We want to get a little bit into the nitty gritty of that and how you structure it, how you do your lead capture and all that sort of stuff. But let's pause briefly and give us an idea of where your business is right now, just your team structure, maybe things like units, average price point, and volume.
Yeah, so we have 5.5 of us. So it's an admin who Megan has been so instrumental in helping me get that person to that point. And that's really been like my new learning challenge is like leadership. It's like sometimes you have the right person and it might not be the best time in their life and you have to really like coach that person. You can't quantify it in numbers as much, but it's a whole new challenge for me. So I have an admin, I have a virtual assistant, we have a transaction coordinator. We hire out the TC right now, but we'll bring it in-house at some point next year because it will be more cost effective. 2 showing assistants and then 1 other agent on my team. So this year we'll do 35 million in volume, which is like almost, I think 65 transactions, 70 transactions. So our average price point is around 550.
Okay, awesome. So you said about 35 million for about how many transactions was that?
Like 65, I think.
65.
A couple of those are like, we also take on a couple like high price point luxury rentals. So that kind of adds in.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Different markets can make that a little bit more sustainable than our rental market down here. That's awesome. Okay, yeah. So for anyone who was curious, I know sometimes it's helpful to know, do they have 10, 12 agents? Do they have 1 agent and an admin? And Kimberlee, you're right there in that, us young professionals are often, a few years into their career, we've got the first, maybe the second hire, or maybe we're getting ready to do the first. So we're going to talk more about team building in a little bit, but yeah, back to Becca's question. Tell us about how you, what is that? Take us through that home buying seminar experience, maybe from the consumer's perspective, and then also from your perspective. And what is that engagement like?
Yeah, so originally it was an in-person thing. So we started doing them at a brewery because I did like 1 or 2 at my office, and the first really nice day that we had in Boston, nobody came, which I don't blame them. Like at the end of a long winter when it's like 60 or 70 degrees out, you want to be outside. You don't want to go to a real estate office. So my lender and I sat down and we thought like, where would people want to go even if the weather is nice? So we came up with the idea of doing them at a local brewery. So we were doing them every other Sunday for the most part, from 11:30 to 1. There was no magic to the time. I get that question all the time, like, when is the best time of day to do it? I will tell you, we literally picked that time because it was the cheapest we could get. So there was no magic behind it, but we did that In 2019, I think we did maybe 35 or 40 of them. And then I did that for a solid year and a half of like tracking my numbers. Every time I knew how much money I would spend on Facebook ads to send people. So they registered through Eventbrite. How many people would register, the conversion rate to people showing up, out of how many people show up, how many are going to turn into clients. Like I knew all the numbers, like how many of those people would be immediate business, nurture business, long-term business. I had all those numbers down. So going into 2020, I had taken all that information and just figured out like, okay, how many houses do I want to sell? How much money do I want to make? Because I tracked everything and I could just work backwards. So I planned out for the year how many events I was going to do, but that didn't last very long, right? So I think we ended up doing 3 and then we got shut down with COVID. So we had to quickly switch to doing them on Zoom. And there was really no difference. Like we still had the same conversion rate. There's pros and cons to both. Someone was asking me the other day, like, if you were going to start now, would you do Zoom or in person? I loved doing them on Zoom because it was just a lot less time for me. So to go in person, like we would print out booklets for them. I'd have to go to the brewery early and set up. Then I'd have to clean up afterwards. I'd have to drive to and from. But when we were doing them on Zoom, I would literally just like throw on a sweater like 5 minutes before and jump on my computer. And we like emailed all the docs out. So it was great. But there was result wise, there was no difference. One of my team members is going to start doing them again in person because he just loves that interaction. So if anybody's interested in starting, it's not that hard. Oh, Becca just asked, do you partner with a lender or vendor? So we partner with a lender, and anybody that wants to put one of these together, like find the thing that ended up working out really well was like my lender was relatively new to the business, but he was a hustler. So it's not the best idea to partner with a lender that maybe is like the top lender in your area, because that person's going to be really busy and they're not going to be as invested in helping you with the lead follow-up. So my lender was like new. He was really smart, good at talking in front of people, didn't get too much into the weeds of like some of the nitty gritty of financing stuff, which you can lose people really quickly if you get too far into that. And he was like invested in getting business. He was hungry. So he helped me with lead follow-up. He would help me like kind of vet people out. Like even if they weren't ready to get fully pre-approved, he would have a preliminary conversation with them to make sure that they're not a total, like if you're pre-approved for like $200,000 here, it's not going to buy you anything. So like, not to be snooty, like I'm never like not working with someone because their budget. I'm working with someone because like they're realistic about what they can get, right? So if they're a $350,000 buyer, but they're fine buying like a studio condo, great, let's go. So he kind of would help vet people out and follow back up with them, or like they would reach out to him and he'd be like, hey, I just talked to so-and-so, I'm sending them back your way. So it's like, it's a really strong partnership, and he pays for half of it. So if you want to go that route, like find someone who's as invested in making it work as you are. And then also commit to doing like, pick four dates that you're going to do it. If you do it once and it doesn't, like, it's not great, too bad, do it again, because it's not going to be great on the first time. It's an evolutionary process. It takes time to get traction. It's going to be like you're going to look at it, like evolve it over time. And the other thing is you're always going to have people that couldn't make it. So you want to have like a future date that you can direct them to, sign them up for. So if you just do it once and it doesn't work, but you don't have more dates planned, then don't even bother.
That's awesome. And then, so you're going back to doing them in person. And it sounds like your teammate might be more of a high I and you're more of a high D, it sounds like, with you preferring the Zoom. Hey, it's quick in and out, not a lot of setup, not a lot of chit chat before and after. What have you learned about yourself from a personality perspective, and how that relates to both your teammates on your team with you and also your clients? Because we know that most people in real estate are high D and high I's, and most people outside of real estate are high S's and C's. So how have you had to adapt who you are and how you interact, not who you are, but how you interact with people in this business?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of like patience for me. I'm not a very patient person. I'm also like not a warm and fuzzy kind of person either. So when I hired that ops person, I wanted to make sure that I had someone that had complementary skills. So like right now she's like, oh, do we do things for birthdays and team anniversaries? I'm like, no, like we don't do anything, because that's not my natural style. It's not that I don't care about people, but I'm just not a warm and fuzzy person. So even just growing a team, like finding someone that complements your behavioral style and having a very clear, candid conversation with them in the beginning, so that they're not expecting you to be warm and fuzzy with them. Like, this is how I am. Know this. Are you okay with this? And your job is to kind of balance that out. As far as clients, like it's definitely been a lot of patience and having to set boundaries too, because I kind of like grew up in a customer service industry. So I worked in restaurants, I worked in retail. That part comes very natural to me, but it also can wear me down. So like if I have clients that constantly every week want to have, like I just had these buyers that closed a couple weeks ago and they were really, really great qualified buyers, but just looking in like such a competitive town. So these people were like shopping like 900 up to like 1.1 million. And every week they put an offer in for like $150,000 over asking on a $900,000 house with zero contingencies, and just still got beat out just because that's the nature of the market that they were looking in. But every single week they wanted for like, I don't know, we probably wrote 10 offers. Every week they wanted to talk on the phone about the offer. And I'm like, at this point, can't you just text me and like tell me what you want to offer? But it was like, it's a lot of just like, okay, this is a big purchase for someone. Like I have to be a little bit more patient. So it's just like an ongoing process for me of reminding myself, like, not everybody operates the way that I do.
Yeah, I love that. And I apologize. I try not to speak in acronyms, but if anyone's not familiar with high D and high I and S and C, that spells DISC, and that's the DISC personality assessment. You can find free versions online if you're not familiar, but it's something within the KW a culture and atmosphere. We talk about the DISC a lot and a million other acronyms. So feel free, anytime you don't recognize an acronym, put that in the chat and we'll be happy to answer it for you. Kimberlee, fast forward us a little bit. You won NAR 30 under 30, just like Kate Carlton here on the call with us.
Okay.
I've got two questions for you in relation to that. Is that something that you actually like, it was like, man, I want to win that, so here's my process I'm going to follow to do that? Or was it organic? And then the second question is, what did that change for you in your business?
To answer your first question, not really. So I was like, oh, that'd be cool, but I like never thought that I was gonna win, and I almost didn't enter. And then like a week before the deadline, I was like, you know what? I won't win if I don't enter, so I might as well just give it a shot. And so I was actually really, really surprised when I won. I know there's people that they're like, this is my path to 30 under 30. I just wasn't one of those people. And so I was really surprised. And as far as like changing my business, if anybody here still qualifies to enter, like just do it. And it doesn't matter so much about your production. And Kelly Henderson, she's a KWYP person in Arizona. She won it when she was super young. She was like 24 or something, and she was really only doing maybe like 4 or 5 million. So it's not necessarily about your production. Obviously, production helps. You can't sell like 2 houses a year and win it, but it's more about your story. So what is the story that you're crafting for yourself? And everybody has a story, but it's like, how are you presenting it in your application? Because it's a publication, like the Realtor magazine. So they want a good story to present into the magazine. So anybody that has the opportunity to still enter, just do it. Even if you don't think you're going to win because you are too young or you haven't done enough business, like just give it a shot. There's no harm in applying. I've actually heard people say that usually you have to apply a couple times before you will win it. But it's been amazing for my business. I've had so many opportunities, like gotten into contact with so many people that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for having won that award.
And is that specifically within the real estate sphere, or are you referring to like local Boston business owners who have recognized it from outside the real estate industry? What kind of doors has that opened for you?
That's a good question. More within the real estate sphere. I've had a lot of opportunities within KW specifically, but also just from like different podcasts that I've been on. I think the first episode of Real Estate Rockstars, which is a pretty big podcast, the first one I was on was because of 30 under 30, but I've now been on that podcast like 4 or 5 times. And every time I'm on that podcast, even if it's just like a state of the market where Aaron and I are pretty much just like shooting the shit about real estate, I almost always get a referral from it or someone like wanting to join my team. So it's marketing, right? Like you can't do it with an expectation of a specific outcome, but like all the little things that you do will add up to help with your brand image.
Yeah, that's awesome. And actually that transitions perfectly into my next question. A lot of the ways we build business are directly with our clients, but other ways are within our agent networks. So you've won 30 under 30. You are really active with KWYP. What is it like for you to build a network with other agents? And I know that you and Meg in Chicago are doing some stuff together. So tell us what you're doing. It seems like you're trying to be pretty systematic about pursuing agent referrals. So tell us what your perspective is there.
Yeah, so we are trying to be systematic because I haven't been systematic. So this year, agent referrals were 30, my 3 top major lead sources were all pretty much 30%, which was weird that it worked out that way. But agent referrals were 30% of my business. The buyer seminars, another 30, and then like referral business from our past clients or sphere was 30%. The rest, there was like 4 or 5 things that kind of added up to the other 10%. But I looked up when I started business planning for this year and I was like, oh my gosh, like this has been 30% of my business this year. And I literally done nothing intentional around it. So what would it look like if I did have intentionality around it? And so I've just been approaching it in terms of like building a database. So all these people I know that have added me on Facebook from different events, different speaking opportunities, I haven't really added them into a database and I'm not doing anything to purposely add value to their lives. And I'm a huge believer in giving back in education and value. Like that's how we approach our whole business in terms of to the consumer. We're all about just the education and the value and before we ever ask for like a close or a sale, because my belief is that if you kind of overload people with that, like you never have to ask them for the business will just come naturally. And so I thought like, okay, well, how do I take this same approach among agents? Because Keller Williams is such an amazing culture of sharing and people giving back and helping each other. And so I wanted to be intentional about it because like we're all better for it, right? It pushes me to keep learning and growing and learning new things. And then it helps other people along the way.
So tell us about what you're doing with Meg in Chicago.
Yeah, so Meg and I started a Facebook group called the Real Estate Collective. And I can't tell you like what we're doing because I don't know that we know yet. So we're like still trying to figure it out. I think it will basically, like anybody on here that's not part of that group, go join it. We would love to have you in it. It's basically kind of like a database for us, right? So we are going to be doing like different Zoom interviews with people. I love to read. Meg likes to read too. So talking about books, talking about business strategies. We may have a little get together at family reunion, but basically just like sharing the things that we're learning. So we are still trying to figure out what we're doing basically, but I think we'll have more clarity in the next few weeks.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. So I just had the group pulled up here. It's the Real Estate Collective on Facebook. There, Meg and Kimberlee, you can see them. So go join that. And then when they figure out what they're going to do with it, we'll be the first ones to know. No, I'm just kidding. That's exciting to hear. You love to read. I've seen your book reviews. Give me like a top 5 or 6. It doesn't have to be a perfect number, but just some of your most impactful books that you want to share with us. If you could give us a reading list.
That's so not fair.
You can make it all 50 books. You just tell us whatever you've been reading.
I just read this book for a mastermind that I'm in. It's not in here. I just read it last week. It's called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Anybody that's like at the point of just starting to grow your business, like beyond yourself, like if you're growing a team, 1000% recommend this book. It's so good. It's about like growing a business in Silicon Valley, about a tech business, but it's still just such a good book and so many lessons to take away from it. My team is reading this book right now, so I'm like halfway through it, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I love it so far. What else? What's the best? The Simple Path to Wealth. I read that this year. That's a really good finance book. Gosh, there's been so many. This is not a fair question, Patrick. I should have like prepared a list ahead of time or something. I'm actually going to be, anybody that's like Facebook friends with me, or I can post it in the KWYP group too. Somebody asked me the other day, what is the list of all the books that I've read, and I haven't done the best job at keeping track of them. I just have like piles of books all over my house. So I'm going to put together the whole list of everything I've read this year, and then everything I'm planning on reading next year, so I can share that with you guys when the list is complete.
And that will be in the Real Estate Collective Facebook group, exclusive access only. And I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to boost your membership there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. So does anyone else have questions? I'm going to pause here. I've got a few more questions on my schedule here that I'm going to ask Kimberlee, but does anyone want to jump in and ask her a question?
Don't be shy.
I want to know, Kimberlee, you've said every time you do some sort of event, podcast, whatever, that you have people reaching out to you to potentially join your team. And I think that's something that a lot of people experience is, oh, you're an agent, I want to join your team. I want to join your team. How do you know someone is the right fit for you and that you want to bring them into your world?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I started this year with 3 agents on my team, and now I'm down to 1. And when I look at the people that are no longer with me, and I really should have more than just one other agent based on like what my goals were, but I needed to get that admin person right before I could add more team members because I didn't want that job back. But when I look at the people that are no longer with me, it's usually because we're out of line with our values. So I find that most people actually aren't even clear on what their core values are to begin with. So what I would recommend is start by putting a little time and thought into it. So this sheet lives on my desk. I look at it every single day. These are my top 5 values: wealth, creativity, growth, gratitude, fun. The people that I am in very good alignment with, I find that at least 2 of those 5 top values, we're in some type of alignment. So gratitude is huge on my team. Every morning we start the day with a call on Zoom and everybody's talking about what they're grateful for. Pretty much everybody on the team, we were doing something we jokingly called like Thick Pockets Thursday, but we kind of took a break from finance books, but it was all like finance, wealth building stuff. So the people that I am in really good alignment and have grown along the way with me, it's usually because we have some alignment with our values. So that's kind of the biggest like filter is when you're exploring the process. I think when you get into the beginning stages of that journey of growing a team, it's like exciting when just somebody wants to join your team, right? You're like, oh my gosh. But you really need to take it from like a recruiting mindset versus a hiring mindset. So when you have kind of like a hiring mindset, you're just looking to fill a position. When you have a recruiting mindset, you're looking to build a pipeline. And when you have multiple options, you can then pick the best option from there. Hopefully that was helpful for everybody.
Yeah, that was great. I was trying to type some notes for the comments, but this is great stuff. And I might have missed.
You're muted.
Patrick, you'll learn how to work Zoom Monday 2 years
I am
into this.
struggling. I still was in the chat bar trying to use my space bar. I missed it. Was there a book attached to that mindset of recruiting? Did you have one of those?
There wasn't. That was just like
Okay.
an aha that I had when I was
I love
reflecting
that.
back on the people that are no longer with me. It looks like someone has their hand raised. Jesse, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Jesse.
Hey, Kimberlee, good morning. Thanks so much for your insight this morning. I have been in real estate for 7 years, but I just got started doing my own production. And what I'm finding oftentimes is getting to meet other agents and this just balance between people being your competition and people being authentic friends. And I am a little bit of a sensitive type. I'm more the warm, fuzzy kind of person. So do you have any insight for me as perhaps a complementary personality on making friends with other agents while also using a competitive nature to your advantage, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's just like figuring out what your guardrails are, right? And how you operate. You have to put boundaries in place for yourself as well as other people. So if you find that you're a little bit more sensitive and like sometimes there's maybe comments or things that get to you, then you're probably in the wrong room. So what can you do to surround yourself with people that are maybe doing more than you are? Because usually those people don't want to bring you down. It's like, it's going to be the people that are maybe like just where you're at or just below that are going to try to bring you down. But if you're surrounding yourself with people that are doing more than what you're doing, they want to help you for the most part if they're a good person. But again, like back to those guardrails for yourself. Like for me, I am very competitive, but like it psychs me out. So I almost never look at like, you know how you can pull the numbers in KW? Like, I almost never look at the numbers in my office because it psychs me out. I'm like, oh, like that person had a better month than me. Like they're ahead of me in volume or production or whatever. So I've found the best success is just putting my head down and focusing on what I'm doing instead of worrying about what other people are doing.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a question. What does the next 5 years look like for your team?
Oh, that is a really good question. Growing. So I would love for us to be kind of the number one team in Boston and then maybe think about expanding outside. So like I have expansion goals and basically everything we're doing, we're building with the mindset of like, okay, this needs to work for where we're at today, but like, will this also scale when we have hundreds of team members? So that's really where I would love to go long term.
Yeah, I love that question, Becca. And that's what I was getting at too, because I love that Kimberlee's clearly systematic with what she's building. She's tried stuff that hasn't worked. She's tweaking, she's reading books, she's building a team. I love that you were at 3 agents and went down to 1. Like you're getting really clear on what's important. So what's the why? I don't think you want to be selling real estate 30 years from now. You've talked about wealth, investing. Are you buying properties? What are your goals like exit strategy? What do you want to build in that regard for yourself personally?
Ooh, exit strategy. That's a tough question. I don't know that I have that part figured out. I was never like super into real estate investing, if I'm being completely honest, but I'm part of a mastermind group of people that are doing like way more than I am. And I just got back from there. I was there last week and like sitting in that room, I was like, holy crap, like I need to be doing this. So I didn't even have any investing goals for next year. And now I'm rethinking that whole thing. These people just like really inspire me and push me to kind of go outside of my comfort zone. But I don't know, like just continuing to grow the business. Eventually I want to open my own restaurants, which is like totally outside of real estate. So whatever gets me to that point, make enough money that I can kind of quasi retire, I guess.
I think Darnell just turned his camera back on. Are you auditioning to be her chef at the restaurant, Darnell?
Oh, smoke
Maybe.
me.
Yeah. If Kimberlee and Darnell are opening a restaurant, I am moving wherever that is. Actually, no, Raleigh's kind of in the middle of Boston.
That restaurant sells lobster. I'll be there.
Yeah, there we go. Well, hey, Kimberlee's spent some time in Maine, so there may be some lobster there. Who knows?
Yeah, that's where I grew up.
Tell us not just the exit strategy, but what do you do now? I know you're really into, I don't know if it's equestrian or dressage or what do we call this, but I know you're into things with horses and throwing seminars and working really hard. What else do you like to do? What does real estate allow you to do now in the current time?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I used to ride horses like really competitively. I competed at the world championships all over the country. And it's so expensive. So I had like a 12-year hiatus from it. And thankfully, like a couple of years ago, I was able to get back into it. I bought like 2 horses last year. I bought one and then sold him and then bought another one. And I now do it, like I don't have the time to go ride all the time. So I've taken just like, how can I be involved in this? Because I love it. So I've taken like an investment standpoint from it. So it's a little bit more like gambling than investing, but I've been buying like these younger horses and then having them trained and started a show and stuff and then selling them for more money than I bought them for. So a little bit like investing, but you never know what they're going to turn out like. So it's also a little bit gambling. So I have a horse right now. He's in Kentucky, trying to get sold. And then traveling, I'm so happy that we can do that again. So next year, I think we're actually going to the Middle East for like 2 weeks, which should be super fun. We're going to go to Egypt and Jordan, hopefully. Travel, hang out with my dog. Becca says slinging houses and horses.
Yeah. There's only one difference, one letter difference between house flipping and horse flipping. So I love that you flip horses. This is amazing. Horse flipping is not as violent as it sounds. That sounds pretty crazy. But,
It's like reminds me of like cow tipping.
yeah, no, seriously, right? Yeah, because you just went to Paris, right?
Yeah, I went to
Recently?
Paris in September.
Yeah.
That was awesome. We're going to LA in a couple weeks, then family reunion. I don't know, going all over the place. Getting to see all your lovely faces.
When you travel, is it tempting for you to always reach out to the KW office and kind of turn it into a little bit of a work trip, maybe write off some of the time or some of the travel, or do you totally turn it off while you're gone?
No, definitely not. When I was in Paris, like Jason Abrams was like, "Oh, do you want me to connect you with the people at the Paris office?" I was like, "Absolutely not." I am an introvert, shocking. So I need a lot of downtime. So I just went to Phoenix last week for that mastermind. And it was like, I was there Wednesday through Friday night. I shared a room with someone. Every single meal I had with like other people. And then I was in a room with people all day long. I came home and just like crashed. So when I travel, I just need like alone time to recharge and like recuperate.
I love that. Yeah. So people jump in if you guys want to hear more about horse flipping and how to do that. Kimberlee can give you all the details on that business model. And I'm being serious. It's a way that she's pursuing. People here might invest in Bitcoin or GameStop. I saw GameStop was trending again on Twitter, so who knows what's going on there.
Yeah. So I wish there was there's not really any equestrian properties in Boston, but maybe I need to open like an expansion team in Kentucky. I was trying to think in my brain how I can like buy a farm as a commercial property and then like do a cost segregation on it to reduce my tax liability. And then maybe like, how can I work that in as like another business? But I haven't quite figured that part out yet.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone the other day who they wanted to subsidize their own like horse equestrian habits. So they just built a bigger stable than they needed and they rent out stalls down here, like in South Carolina, because a lot of people up north apparently will winter their horses down there.
Yeah, people
I've never heard of.
Like ship their horses to the south for the winter.
So maybe there's another opportunity to be a horse trafficker, just moving
Airbnb for horses.
Exactly, right? Yeah. Airbnb for horses. We actually do have a question in the chat from Allie Harrell. She wanted to know about the showing assistant model and what does that look like?
That's a good question. So I there's so many different ways to do it. I pay my showing assistants a percentage of GCI. Most people say you should pay like 10 to 15%. I pay 20, which is probably more than I should, but I also believe in rewarding good people. So, and I think I make them do more work than most people. So anything that would I tell people anything that would require me to leave my house or leave my office, they do. So we handle all the buyer consultation, lead gen, that type of stuff. But once they've signed as a client, the showing assistant is responsible for everything. They're responsible for scheduling showings, attending the showing. I write the offer and negotiate anything from inspections, but they do everything else. So attend the inspection, schedule the inspection, walkthroughs. If someone needs to get a plumber over there to get quotes, like they're responsible for all of that. There's some people pay like per door, some people pay a salary. I don't really believe in doing that because I want them to have skin in the game. So if you pay per door, then they're more likely to show more houses, and the goal for us is to show less houses, right? So we want to like get super clear on their criteria and show them less of the correct houses instead of more of the incorrect houses.
Is this person on your team or is this somebody else in your office?
So we have two of them and both of them are our team members. So one of them joined us halfway through this year. The other one I've had since June of 2020. And so this is her first full year. She'll make close to 6 figures this year just from showing houses.
That's incredible. So logistically, you're the one writing the offers. They're not doing that yet, but they are licensed because they're opening doors. Are you on like a group text thread with them, with your showing assistant? Like, hey, can we go see this house? Or are you totally in the dark until it's time to write an offer?
No, I want to be looped in on, I don't know, I'm kind of a control freak. So I like to know what's going on, even if I'm not commenting on it. So it's either like an email thread or a group text with the client being like working on scheduling everything. Even as far as like, if she's running 5 minutes late, she's texting in that group text so that I am always in the know of what's going on.
Yeah, and that's how I've structured it as well, because I know I had some limiting beliefs on, my clients aren't going to want me to hand them off to someone else. But you don't do any showings. I still do one occasionally, but I transitioned my showing assistant into a full-on buyer's agent. which obviously has a lot more responsibility. So I was just curious how you do that with the communication piece. Have you
It's
had
all-
any pushback from clients about kind of being handed off?
Never. If anything, I get lots of great compliments. They're like, oh, Michaela's amazing. Oh, Juan was amazing. The reality is like these people are doing a better job than I would if I still have the job, right? So if it was me at this point, I'm like, here's a kitchen, here's a bathroom. Do you want to buy this house? Yes or no? They're very patient. They're like a lot more nurturing. Anybody, like, I hear people say the same thing that you just said all the time, like, oh, well, my clients want me. Like, it's a limiting belief. It's really that you haven't set the proper expectations with your clients. So what we do is like during the buyer consultation, I always talk about it. So I'm like, all right, so here's what's going to happen next. Anything that you want to see, just let me know. I'm always going to do my best to be there for showings, but I can only be in so many places at the same time. So my teammate Michaela is going to be involved. And here's the great thing about this is that her job is to only show houses. So she's always going to be available. You never have to worry about my schedule conflicting with your schedule and you missing out on an opportunity. So you just have to make it about the client, not about you.
Does Michaela have certain hours? Like, is she a 9 to 5, or is she start work at 10 and work later?
No, she just has like, I'm very respectful about their days off or their days off, unless there's like an emergency or something that just like can't be rescheduled. And if that's the case, then I'll say like, oh, take a different day off. They have to be available on the weekends. And other than that, like, so we have a team call every morning at 8:45. So we expect them to be on the team call, but then whatever they want to do with their day, it's up to them. They just have to be available and they have to be responsive. So if someone emails or texts, like I expect that they're responding to that within a certain period of time and getting back to the client.
And are they exclusively showing assistants on your team? Like they're not doing their own individual stuff? Like they can't have a buyer off on the side? Okay. Yep. So they're
So
anything that they get in, like if they get a lead that's ready to go, it goes through the team.
yeah. So, I mean, she referred 3 or 4 pieces of business this year. So if they refer something to the team, I'll give them really good splits. Like one of them referred a listing this year. So I paid her a really good split on it, more than if she referred it out. I don't know that they would like know what to do if they took the business, but there's always an opportunity for someone on my team to move up to being a buyer's agent if they want, but the expectation is that we're not like dabbling our like one foot in the other. It's like, if you're going to be a buyer's agent, you're expected to lead generate, you're expected to do all these activities. So if you don't want to do that, then we're not like halvesing each role.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I see Becca had asked the same question in the chat, so that's great. I'm going to ask one more question. And while I ask this and while you answer, I want you guys to be thinking of your questions for Kimberlee. This is really valuable time and information here. So this will be one of the last few that I ask. But I asked a question in the KWYP Facebook group a few months ago about bonusing your admin. And you had some crazy cool ideas on that kind of blew my mind, with vacation time and vacation stipends and stuff like that. So you can tell us about how you structure that, or what you offer. I know you just mentioned overpaying on referrals and on your showing assistants. It seems like you like to be really generous toward your teammates, which I love.
Yeah,
to keep them high retention. So yeah, go ahead and pull up whatever you got there.
I'm trying to find it because this was a little bit different than I've done before. Okay. And she hasn't hit her like first 90 days yet. But basically when I hired this person, it was interesting because I took her through, well, actually I used Your Realty Leverage, Megan, the company that Megan works for, and they are fantastic about following the KBA process. And I took her through the whole process, and something just, I was like, I feel like she's it. And then she got to the group interview and just absolutely flopped. Like it was terrible. And everybody was like, do not hire this person. Well, I guess there had been some confusion. She thought it was going to be like a casual, like get to know each other. But the people that I had on the group interview were like grilling her with questions. So I get why she like totally bombed. And so they were all like, don't hire her. And I'm like, I just feel like I should hire her. So one of my friends who has a really big team, does a lot of hiring, I talked to him about it and I was like, have you ever hired someone that like everybody told you not to? And he's like, yeah, I've done that a lot. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And so he actually was kind enough to like get on a call for an hour with me and we talked to her, and she knew it went terribly. She was like, yeah, I did not feel good about it. But on that call, he hires so many people. So he just straight up asked her, like, how much money do you need to make to live? And then how much money do you want to make? And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe you just asked that. But I found out like what she really needed to make. And I pay her like, basically for her to pay all her bills, I pay her that as a salary. But I also really like to reward, like, you should be rewarding the things that you want to see more of, right? So I would love to see more referrals on our team. So she has a compensation structure that rewards that. I can let me pull it up to tell you guys what I put together. Offer letter. So she gets, before she gets her license, it's 15% on a bonus, because you can't like pay out commission. So it's like a 15% bonus on the GCI from anything that she refers. And there's an expectation of like minimum referrals for the year. Once she has a license, 25%, she gets 1% of profit for every year that she is with me. So my goal is that every year we're growing and making more and more money, and I want her to be invested in making sure that we're profitable. So she also can get KW profit share. We have a revenue share program on our team to incentivize people bringing like team members in. So everybody on the team, not just my admin, they'll get up to 1% of their yearly GCI paid out once a year. So it's like $1,000, but it's for like any person that you refer to the team. And then I also gave her like, so we have unlimited vacation policy on our team, but then after her first full year, I wanted her to be eligible for, because I feel like admin people are like, if you have the right personality type, a lot of times they're like terrible about taking vacation because they're like, they don't treat themselves in that capacity. So I gave her a $2,500 a year vacation stipend to make sure that she takes a vacation. And so it starts 12 months after her like start date. She's eligible after 12 months. And that's kind of it for like different things that I did.
So you said 1% profit for each year they've grown. So does that mean if they've been on the team 4 years, they get 4% of the profit?
Exactly.
So how does that work when you have teammates? You have like 3 teammates who've all been on for like 5 years.
No, it's just for my admin, not for everybody on the team.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And then if you have someone that's been on like 10 years, like they're getting 10% of the company profit, or does it cap out somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully in 10 years, we're making like $10 million, you know? So the goal is for us to like, she knew what she was getting into. This wasn't like, hey, we're just going to make like, we're probably going to do 20 million every year and it's not going to go from there. I was like, girl, this is what I want to do. We're taking over the world. So she knew what she was signing up for.
That's awesome.
But with that like comes really high expectations. So.
Well, as you guys can tell, Kimberlee runs a tight ship. And so we've got 2-3 more minutes of her time. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask, or just anything random, whether favorite podcast or anything else about Kimberlee? I'm gonna check the group chat here to make sure I didn't miss anything.
This is Ryan. It's not a deep question. Will you be at family reunion?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, I'll be looking for you.
The question for Kimberlee is, will she be on stage at family reunion? Because that's more appropriate. Are you presenting this year, Kimberlee?
I'm not sure yet. They sent a survey out to everybody a couple months ago, and it was like, if you did present, what would you want to present on? So they haven't told us yet. Like they haven't sent out the things like this is what the panel is. It usually doesn't happen until like a month before.
You're getting to hear the inner workings of the family reunion planning schedule.
Great question. It's a disaster. It's not fun to be involved in.
Great question, Ryan. Anyone else before we let Kimberlee go and get on with her day?
Okay. You guys are a quiet group.
It's nice weather down here in the South. Everybody's outside playing, like you were mentioning. Kate, you're a 30 for 30 sister. Do you already know everything about Kimberlee, or do you have any questions you wanted to ask? And she just went off camera. Oh, there she is.
Kate's hiding.
Sorry, everybody. I've been driving. But actually, I was able to talk to Kimberlee last week. She took some time to chat with me on the phone and answered some questions because I'm kind of in the growth. I don't know. I'm trying to get to the next level, and I've been having some mindset issues, and she was kind enough to take some time with me last week. So I appreciate that. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great. That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we're good to go. It was a little crackly at first, but we got you talking about Kimberlee spending
Sorry.
time and investing in you. Well, everyone, Kimberlee, if it's okay, I'd love to invite everyone to Facebook friend you, join the real estate collective group that Kimberlee and Meg out of Chicago run together. And one of the great ways you can support Kimberlee, of course, please send her referrals up for anything in the Boston metro area. Anytime she posts on Facebook, this is a good rule for all of us. Like her post, drop a little comment. That's going to help the algorithms bump her post higher up to the top of her feed. And so, even if it's just an emoji or a, hey, a little fire emoji on something, or like one of the little arms. So do that, support her business, and please thank her for her time here. So with that said, we're going to be back in January. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy all your holidays you may celebrate. We're going to be back in January with Jordan Stewart, a good friend of mine who actually just founded the new KW Sports and Entertainment division. I booked him, or I brought it to the team, and we booked him before that even launched. So we're really excited to hear about that. A whole new division of Keller Williams, hot off the press. He's going to be our January guest. So keep an eye out for that. Again, a reminder to send this link out to your friends. This is not just for KWYP. It's for anyone in KW. It's for people outside of KW, other firms too. We're here to share knowledge, and it's even for people outside of real estate. A lot of what Kimberlee said today are principles about building teams and hiring. This is valuable content, and that's what I love about YP and what YP offers. So with that said, everyone, please let's give a round of applause for Kimberlee. I know you guys can stay on mute. It's okay. You don't have to come off. Kimberlee, thanks so much for your time. Please let us know any other ways we can support you. Did you have any other parting thoughts?
Thank you guys so much for having me. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out directly. Other than that, have an awesome holiday.
Awesome. Thanks, Kimberlee.
This is awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Becca. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.